Welcome to
Welcome all.
another edition of Brown and Browner.
Yep.
And actually, just wanted to give a shout out to all the mothers. Mother's Day was just this past weekend. I hope that everybody celebrated their mothers. The things that all mothers do is give love to most mothers, almost all mothers, give love to their children and make sacrifices so that the children can have a better life and more opportunities than they had. So for all of the sacrifices that all of the mothers around the world have made, we want to all take our hats off, my glasses off to all of you, and hope that you all had a wonderful Mother's Day and felt relaxed, felt appreciated, and celebrated, because that day is designed for you.
Now, this is a fun time of year. You got Mother's Day, you've got graduations, you got ultimately Father's Day leading into June. So Memorial Day for our vets. I mean,
wait, hold on. What'd you call it? Father's Day? Is that a holiday?
I wish.
Because you won't hear anything like you hear about Mother's Day.
No.
I
hate to say it, there is a bias. There is a hard bias. And,
yeah, Father's Day will come and go, and people will be like, "Oh, it was Father's Day. Hi, Dad. Thank you." Yeah.
At best, as a father, you get to appreciate it's Father's Day. Your kids will maybe do something for you. Your wife will do something for you, whatever it is. And then, you watch the U.S. Open. That's really what you do.
That's about it.
You see who wins on the 18th and gets to hug their dad at the end or whatever it is at the finish.
Dad, my kids, exactly.
It's a good moment. But no, it's a good time of year to celebrate family, celebrate, those you love the most. So definitely appreciate it and value it while you can. Absolutely.
And so I noticed something yesterday too. I guess for Christians, Catholics, it seemed like there were many more people out at the churches and everything celebrating. And I just gotta mention, when you pass by a church that isn't Black,
yep,
it's very solemn.
It is.
And actually, I sat with my mom yesterday. We had breakfast, and she's a churchgoer. She's a Bible thumper kind of lady. And we saw one, presentation before she didn't go to church yesterday because of Mother's Day. We had all this. So we watched it on TV and had breakfast. And the non-Black churches are and Jesus and Corinthians 2 and let's talk, and hey, there's no real interaction.
Right.
You turn to the Black churches, hallelujah.
Yep.
They do the praise dance to start the show, and then they go into it, and you got people involved. And if you've ever been to a Black church, let me tell you, it can be very entertaining. Yes. Even if you're agnostic, you could go to a church and be very entertained and catch the spirit, because everyone's so hyped up and energized and interactive in that whole program. And I have to say, it can be uplifting. So just for those, I'm not saying, because I'm not really the church going guy. I went to Catholic high school, but I sort of observe all religions. I don't observe one specifically. So just and I think that leads into the idea of what we think about, like the Churchill Downs. If you go to a Black church, they got hats like that every Sunday.
Yes, sir. There are pomp and circumstance. Yes. there are eloquent dresses. There's color in the fabric. It's not black and white.
I had to take a picture of my mom's shoes and put it out there. My niece won an award at DePaul. They had these separate awards, and one was called Style and Drip. That's where awards are today. And my niece won that, and I had to take a picture of my mom's shoes, because my mom, even though she's turning 80 this year, oh my God, she is like Miss Style. She had these stylish shoes, and I had to take a picture, and I gave her my own personal award. You also get the Style and Drip award, Mama.
There you go. Well, I mean, like you said, there was a little bit of an uptick, I think, in people going to church and stuff over the weekend, which was nice to see. I also think there was a little bit of a re-energizing of faith and community from the fact that we have now an American Pope, for God's sakes, and I think that
not only an American Pope, he comes from Chicago, guys. Went to Mendel High School. For anybody who knew him as a kid,
fan.
yeah. So that was actually sort of weird. And I got a funny couple memes. They had one with the Pope and hot Chicago style hot dog and all of that stuff. And I know some people who are really serious about their religion might be like, oh, that's blasphemous. I thought it was funny, and it wasn't anything that was to be blasphemous or to put down the Pope or the religion. It was just more making fun of or acknowledging this person was from Chicago and using something that's like a Chicago label or known to be Chicago, like deep dish pizza, and they put him in it. I found it funny. I didn't find it offensive at all.
There's a national pride to popes, when it comes to, I think our last pope was a Hispanic in the first time in a while. I believe he's Argentinian. So there was a big confluence of that. Before that, there was a German pope, and it was also a strong stance there. So why not take pride in the fact that, the Pope is from Chicago. Yeah, you might have Portillo's at the Vatican one day. You might have, the Bulls. I think that's the best meme I saw over the weekend was the Bulls introduction music being played as the Pope walked on the stage.
That would be awesome. That would be awesome. What is that, Gary Glitter or something like that?
Yes,
that would be awesome.
So you know what? Embrace it, enjoy it. I think it was I don't know the other popes that were running or whatever. It was like the conclave's a conclave, But at the end of the day, I think they made a great decision. I think it's good for not just the country. I think it's good for the world. The guy is very global, which is kind of cool. He spent a lot of time away from the United States. So it's a good thing. And he's younger. That's the other thing. It's not an 80-year-old pope we're talking about. It's 60 some odd year old, hopefully nothing, no bad health kind of thing, that kind of thing. You want somebody to be everlasting and a symbol of, religion at some point. So it makes sense.
I think so. I agree with that. And, I sort of feel like that even with the presidents that are being elected, et cetera. I think when you get a certain age, I'm sorry, the expectation, if you have an 80-year-old pope that's being elected today, is when is the next election?
When's the next one up?
The next conclave. And, I find it amazing that there were so many people who were out there for days waiting to see the right smoke come up, to signal that a pope has been chosen. Boy, that's some faith for you. I would have been gone. I wouldn't even sit that long for if Black Sabbath came back and did a concert. I would not be there to do that. I'll tell you that right now.
On a sidebar and related to another meme, but they're still waiting for the smoke to arise from AT&T Stadium in Dallas, Texas, so that they figure out when the new owner is coming into play.
That would be nice. And, just a side note, before we talk about anything Kentucky Derby and stuff, I have to ask this to the Dallas Cowboy fans.
Yep.
You have a new coach who came in and said he was trying to establish a new kind of culture.
Yep.
And then you get George Pickens.
You just said an oxymoron in one sentence. It's great.
I mean, the guy's got talent, but I'm sorry. I'm just me. I'm more of a strong believer of having a team means much more than having a player that is going to be a detriment to your locker room. Yep. I don't care how good he is. That's not what a team is about. And if you got to sit and babysit a person because they don't know how to act in a mature way in that kind of setting, meaning balling out for your teammates, not worried about your stats, not whining that you don't get the ball when you're winning. You know what? We won, but I didn't get enough passes to me. That's not the guy I want to play with.
Do you think they consulted Des Bryant, or not Des Bryant? Sorry, CeeDee Lamb.
Maybe, because CeeDee needs some help. CeeDee Lamb needs some help.
I don't disagree. He needs help. I mean, I think between him and tight end and everything else, they've got a good ball distribution. CeeDee Lamb still, as far as we know, he still wants the ball.
Yeah.
And now George Pickens wants the ball, and it's going to help deflect, and it's a great setup in that regard. But at what point does the locker room blow up? That's the thing,
And division in the locker room is the worst thing that you can have. If you're not playing for each other and you're just playing for yourselves, then you might as well go play tennis or play golf where you can do that.
Absolutely.
There's no place for that in basketball, football, baseball. It's about lifting up your team, and your excellence should be an example that you provide for others to achieve, not utilize so that you feel like you can leverage being the attention of the team, and the fans and such. So this is going to be an interesting experiment. One thing that I know that I could trust is the Steelers organization has always been about character. Even when they had some characters like Brown and such back in the day, you know where you are, Antonio. I don't even know what you're doing now, but they let those guys go because they didn't fit the culture. That's why they win all the time, even if they're not winning championships. They are there. They are going to the playoffs. They have a mentality, and when you play Steelers ball, you sort of, you accept that, and you believe in that vision, and you ball out for it.
No, there's
if they're letting this guy go, why would you pick him up?
There's team cultures that predicate good success around the NFL and other organizations. No question about it. The Steelers are the class of that, no question. Similarly, if you talk about the Ravens have this culture and this dynamic because of their GM, because of their coach, because of the aura of the city. It's a working class environment. And the same thing. Now, I give them flack being a local person that's kind of the cynic and says, yeah, they bring in reformed, prisoners and murderers. And they make it work. they're like the reform. They're like the correction system of the NFL, and they make it work. They're like the newly improved Raiders, if you will.
Ouch. Sorry, Baltimore. That's a fan of yours, just so you know.
Hey, I'm a fan outside the Chiefs. It's a great organization. I love the fact that I now live in a very fortunate situation where I get to see the Ravens and a successful Commander situation. Again, organization that changed the culture, and I think is doing everything positive to make that right in DC, to say the least.
Well, I think when you talk about culture, and it's funny, we're talking about the Dallas Cowboys, and just before I say this, I'll have to say that they're giving him a tryout, right? Yeah. They got the last year of his rookie contract, and he wants to get paid. So the danger in that is he could do the Jimmy Butler, and I'll say all the right things, just so this year we'll get by it. You'll pay me my $100 million, and then the real me will start coming out.
Yeah.
But I would have to say that we're talking about the Dallas Cowboys, and comparing them with other organizations. I feel like you've talked about Washington, the Commanders, and what they're doing. Need a new name, but what they're doing. It all started with getting rid of Dan Snyder. Yeah, the culture was established by the person who was leading the organization.
Right.
Same thing with the Bears.
Yep.
Same thing with the Cowboys. They have these old regimes that are in place. Dan Snyder was not an old regime. He was just a guy with money who got into a situation for a minute. But they refuse to allow change because they're still living back in the 1980s, 1990s, and they don't understand that players have changed, the culture's changed, the money dynamics have changed, and you have to change with that. The Bears, the reason they're mired in, I'll say mediocrity, but that's actually giving them a compliment. The reason they've been mired in that for decades is because they haven't changed their leadership to change the culture. And yes, they put some GMs in place, and some do some well, and you change coaches, but the real change needs to be up top. Do we want to win, or are we just a franchise looking at the bottom line?
I mean, think about it this way, and zero knock to the ownership of the Chiefs with Lamar Hunt. I mean, Lamar Hunt is Lamar Hunt. He is one of the gold standards in football. However, it kind of took his passing and then the torch taken over to Clark Hunt to kind of change the dynamic in KC a little bit, to where they took more responsibility in the ownership office to build a new culture, because they had entrusted into GMs for so long, and the GMs honestly were running into a ground in the 90s and the 2000s. Yeah, they were bringing in some dynamically offensive great teams, all that stuff. But then at one point, they abandoned that even, and they're like, oh, let's just take whatever the Patriots have left over. And that obviously didn't work out too well. And as a Chiefs fan, that was frustrating. And they even brought in the GM for the Patriots, for God's sake. And it was horrible, And they finally figured, okay, let's build our own brand. So Clark Hunt came in, said, you know what, Andy Reid, one of the best names in coach, obviously, not just after the fact, but even before the fact, culturally well-known, great pedigree, great coaching tree. Bring him in, let him run the reins, and then brought in the right GM and everything else. And everything has clicked into place to where now you built a brand and a culture in KC to build off of, even when, God forbid, Andy Reid retires, and so on and so forth.
Well, and look at what the Eagles have done. The Eagles are mired in the same kind of thing, playing in a weak-ass Eastern Division, the East, NFC East, and yet they couldn't win. And they had a horrible culture. Then, the fans are going to beat you up like New York. And now they've changed that, and Lurie has changed that, and they now have a winning culture and have a brand that people buy into and want to be a part of. when you're a good organization because people want to come to you. You don't have to go searching for people.
Speaking of which, I don't know if you saw the morning announcement, the NFL opening game for this season.
So who is it? The Eagles against who?
Who do you think?
Not the Chiefs.
Them boys.
Wow, now that'll be an interesting
tell you what, that's made
league.
for see television on game one. NFL knows how to brand its product.
That could be really ugly really fast.
Game one. I mean, normally in a situation with those teams, they've always got playoff implications, that kind of stuff. So December is the drama. But you're talking about game one from the get-go. You're talking about divisional matchup, high stakes on the line for home field, everything.
Well, I tell you what, it probably won't mean much to Philadelphia because they're the champs. They've got a team in place that could.
They've retooled 100%. Yep.
Yeah. But it would be a great test for Dallas.
Yes.
Because you've gone through your OTAs, you've gone through all of your training camps, and now you're actually playing real football.
Yep.
And even if they don't win, if they can compete, that would be a good sign. But if they get blown out like they were getting last year,
right?
Boy, it could snowball fast because all it takes is a little bit of losing, and you got Micah Parsons on a podcast going, "We still suck," and that's just going to divide the locker room, and it's going to keep the downward spiral, the precipitous fall. And who knows where Dallas will end up. Maybe that's what they need. They need to get a high draft pick, have another lousy year, have a high draft pick.
They've got to clean up the defense, I think, still. I think Philly is just – they've rearmed so well. And honestly, Howie Roseman deserves a freaking Nobel Prize for what he's done to just not even, like, renew everything under the cap for the Eagles, which is amazing, but also bring in top-line talent off the draft. I mean, this guy just doesn't stop. He's basically equivalent to what you had in baseball with the Red Sox and then ultimately the Cubs with 1 year, the 1 year they got the title with GM work that has just gone phenomenal. So you got to give some of these general managers credit when it's due.
Yeah, I agree. You mentioned something I thought was interesting, and I've seen it here in Chicago in a different way, in a different sport. Bill Wirtz owned the Blackhawks for a long time. And he was of the mindset, the Blackhawks hadn't won since '61. We're talking about professional hockey for those who don't know.
Yep.
Hadn't won since like the Stan Mikita years. And I remember growing up there, I was watching it on this channel that was like a UHF channel called WSNS. And it was partly Spanish during the day. And then at night they would show Blackhawk games and stuff like that, right? And he refused to market his product. And he figured that he could put it on a nondescript station, not have any real, and figured that people should be coming to the stadium to watch his product. They hadn't won. They were not even mediocre for the longest period of time. He passed away and Rocky Wirtz took over. And within 2 years, they were contenders and then had a semi-dynastic run where they won 3 championships in 6 years. Now they're back mired in that, and they were, getting their draft picks and probably retooling and be good in a few years. But it's amazing how, and we talked about this earlier, that old school thinking from a leadership standpoint, you can't win with that.
Yep.
You can't. You have to understand the landscape of today and be able to utilize that in a way that's going to make your team successful. And if you're just looking at bottom line, you will never be successful. Because all you're doing is just letting people go when it's time to pay them, and then getting new people and never having a cohesive team, never developing talent to where you're able to take advantage of it when it's 3-4 years in because you're afraid to give them that big contract. You got to do that in today's society, and you got to make the right picks. The Eagles are doing that. The Chiefs have done that in the past, and there are teams that are doing that in other sports. That's how you become a winner. And you can't be sitting here trying to, penny pinch to be a winner. Ask the Cubs. They didn't win for 100 years. And then Ricketts came in, Epstein came in, and they had a different mentality. They didn't really capitalize on it for a long period of time because they went right back to that same mentality of, well, let's not pay anybody and let's hope that these guys will win from nowhere, which today, right now they're doing halfway decent. But I don't know if that's going to be
the Central over my Cards by a game, so y'all don't give it credit for right now. And with a staff that I barely know the players of, so I'm give the Cubs some credit this year for what they're doing.
Yep, got to give it to them. Hey, we wanted to talk about one thing. Kentucky Derby.
Yep.
What's
So-
wrong? What's wrong with horse racing today?
Yeah, honestly, the allure and the fascination with horse racing is now gone. And I think there's multiple fronts on this. One, you've got this situation where you got a Kentucky Derby winner this year, won really well, and then comes out the next day. It's like, yeah, he's not going to race the Preakness this week. And yeah, I'm biased. I live in Baltimore. I want to be able to see the best horses and stuff like that if I go out there. At the same time, the whole allure of horse racing is so that you can win the Triple Crown. It's like somebody saying in the football season, yeah, we're just playing for the regular season. We're not playing for the playoffs or Super Bowl. That kind of thing. Like, it doesn't make sense. And now, yeah, I get that horse racing and horse owning and horse breeding is a monetary thing. But don't you just devalue your entire sport, if you will, by not having some sort of competition or phase or thing where it's actually meaningful? Yeah, I get that they race in a million different races throughout the year. And yeah, horses are raced in, almost weekly, if not monthly, or whatever it is these days, right? But these 3 races are the bane of existence globally. People strive to win the Triple Crown. They strive to win a
historically, that was the thing. Every year, you go back to, Secretariat and all of these famous horses, Man of War. It was all about trying to win all 3 races. And once you win the first leg, you almost are obligated to try for the next 2.
Think about this for a second. This year, the entire stable at the Kentucky Derby were all sired by Secretariat.
Wow.
Every single freaking horse. And
wow.
Why was that important? Because Secretariat's one of the greatest horses that ever raced. Now,
those are the kind of genes you're trying to get other horses to have so you can replicate that.
20 years from now, am I going to be able to talk about other horses that are coming up and literally in the 2000s now that have the reverence of a Secretariat or anything else that's ever won the Triple Crown? No. Honestly, horse racing to me, and I'm going to make a declaration, is going to be a forgotten sport in 20 years. Because of the fact that you pull these horses out because of your hurt, you claim different things that, it's not worth it for me to go down there and race or lose its value or whatever it is, all monetary, right? Then, of course, last year and the last couple of years, you had that whole scandal with Bob Baffert, who was one of the biggest, horse breeders, horse owners in the country.
Yeah.
Had an issue, obviously got banned at Churchill Downs, all sorts of stuff, there. And I get that. However, now you've also taken away the brand of your image of your sport. Bob Baffert was that guy. He was the dude with the white hair that showed up, and he was, he was there at Churchill Downs walking his horse in. Not there anymore. And I get there's other great owners and everything. Credit given. But the fact of the matter is, you have a championship horse that wins a race, and you're like, okay, he's going to race the next 2 because you get 2-week breaks, first of all. They got 2 weeks off. You'd think a horse is conditioned that way and all that stuff, but no, it's like, we're going to protect the horse. We're going to, do this, that, and the other. He got his value or whatever. Monetary driven stuff. I'm sorry, because of that, you're going to be a forgotten sport. Simple enough. Nobody cares.
And I was looking through the list of horses, and these horses, the Citation, remember that horse, back in the day, won 16 consecutive stake races, and the first horse to win $1 million. Secretariat. This is in 1973. It's 2025, and you have a race that all of the horses in the race were really. So that was 50 years ago. So that shows you Seattle Slew. Remember that? Affirmed. Remember that? American Pharaoh not too long ago. Justify. So these horses are known. This was 2018. It is just amazing that they don't try to push that more and try to incentivize owners. And don't get me wrong, there is some abuse. There is via drugs or overworking or whatever it may be of some of the horses. And I understand that you need to be careful because horses, as powerful and beautiful as they are, can be very brittle. And all it takes is one serious injury, and basically they're going to what they used to call the glue factory, right?
Yep.
So I can understand it, but yeah, it sort of takes away the allure. It's sort of like after Mike Tyson left boxing, I felt like boxing sort of took a big dip because you really didn't have anybody who were, able to carry that torch of the Ali's and Foremans and these great champions that won for a long period of time and seemed invincible. You don't have that anymore. It seems like they're just a bunch of, some things are just propped up, like the Tyson I forget his name, Tyson, and other guy. They fought 2-3 times, and I feel like it's the Canelos of the world. You just don't have that flash that you used to have. The Oscar De La Hoyas, and the Sugar Ray Leonards. You don't have any of that.
Is what we call the UFC now, because the UFC has done an excellent job of branding their sport. And yeah, it's a more violent sport. I get all that, and there's some popularity, obviously, globally around it. But you've also got popular figures in UFC that people recognize, and that's the whole point. Yeah, it's just sport. I get it, and people are going to get hurt. I get all of that, but there is a science to you want to build a brand. It's got to be lasting, and it can't be just for the money at the end of the day.
Well, and I think they're doing a poor job. What they used to do, and you would hear the old expression, now they're fighting tomato cans to build up their record. And then once they got a big enough record to where they had this, following, then you started pairing them with, some of the top people. I don't know if they're doing that anymore. And I agree, the UFC has done a much better job. I'll watch a UFC. I can't say I watch boxing anymore because I don't find it
think about this.
Exciting.
Think about the Olympics. You used to want to watch boxing in the Olympics. There's a national pride to it. I can't name a single American boxer or any other boxer in Olympic history in the last 20 years, probably, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, there have been
a few. Junior might be the last one, Yeah.
No, I agree with you. I think that that's another one of those sports that took a hit. And while you still have just the old school, appreciation of pugilism, and people will still watch it, I just nowhere near it was in the heydays of the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. You just don't see that anymore. And the UFC has become that organization, professional organization that people would prefer to watch. It may be a little brutal at times, but I think people prefer to watch that because you actually see people fighting instead of doing the slow dance where they grab each other by the hip and hold each other's arms. They get the clutch and wait for the referee to unclutch them.
Little kiss on the ear,
bite on the ear, wink, wink.
Bite,
Surprised they didn't make a cereal called Ears or something after Mike Tyson did that, right? Like just a little bit bitten out. I know we only got a little bit of time this morning, but we got 15 minutes or so. Let's talk about what's really happening in sport today, which is basically the playoffs of the NHL.
Yep.
But for me, more importantly, the NBA.
Yeah, and I will say this. So it's been awesome actually watching playoff hockey. For those of you that aren't, enthusiasts or anything, playoff hockey is arguably some of the best stuff you can watch in sports. Period. I don't care who you are. You don't have to be a fan of either team. The excitement, the pace of play, everything is just so engaging. It's unbelievable. The fact that we had 2 stellar game 7s in round 1 in the NHL. And I'm telling you, that just hooks you in when you're watching that kind of stuff.
Agreed.
Overtime, shootout. I mean, it just gets wild. It's a good time. That said, we'll probably delve a little bit more into the deeper nuances of the NHL and the playoffs more. But like you said, the NBA is the talk of the town right now in terms of the playoffs. Now, people are willing to fork over, secondary mortgages and stuff to go to the Knicks game the other day. I think people knew what was coming.
You knew it was coming.
Yeah, you knew it was coming, so it was just a matter of time. And as my colleague has said here, the Celtics are going to live and die by the 3. Guess what happened the first 3 games? First 2 games you get cold. Last game you shoot 20 and you win.
I think it's just simple math. I know that complex math says throw up 53s and try to hit more than 30%, you'll win. But we're seeing that. The bad thing is, like you said, I felt like the Knicks were going to get their asses whooped, and they got their asses whooped.
Well, and that's the thing. If you look at it, just think about this statistically. The Celtics lost the first 2 games. It's not that the Knicks won. Yeah, the Knicks played hard, and they came back and everything else. Jalen Brunson's barely shot like 30%, and the rest of the team is kind of a supporting cast. Cat's not even there as far as I'm concerned. First 3 games.
He had an okay game too.
Okay games, but nothing to lead the team like you would expect, somebody with his brand and his recognition, especially down low. That said, I mean, this is the Celtics series to control as far as I'm concerned. You've gotten right back in. It's 2-1. You shoot lights out, you win the series 4-2 as far as I'm concerned at this point if you go on streak again. Otherwise, maybe this stays close to 6-7. Maybe the Knicks can kind of rally, but at this point, the Knicks had their chance, in my opinion. They had their chance to show up and take a 3-0 lead. Think about that. And really put pressure.
The game that they prepared to win. They were going home up 2-0 in a playoff series, and they laid an egg. And I can tell you, as much as you may be a Nick fan, Stephen A. and all you other guys, Spike and whatever, the better team. You know
Yes.
who the better team is. And it's not even like this. It's like this. I mean, what happened during the regular season? Did the Knicks beat anybody that's in the playoffs currently? I don't think so.
I don't think so either. No, like I said.
I know they didn't beat the Cavaliers or the Knicks or the Celtics. I'm not sure about Indiana. And that's a whole different story. Indiana did exactly what the Knicks should have done, where they lost the first game when they got back home, but they won the second game, and now they're up 3-1, and they are in the driver's seat.
Yep. And you got to feel for the Cavs. I mean, I get they don't have 3 of their 6 best players playing and all that stuff. And, bad circumstance, Donovan Mitchell gets knocked out of the game. I mean, a number of things. But I tell you what, these Pacers are hungry. And they've been hungry for the last 2 consecutive playoff seasons consecutively. And they've got the right pieces to make a run. Is it enough to beat anybody in the West? No, not in my opinion. But
don't think so either.
So can they make it an interesting series with the Celtics possibly in the Eastern Conference Finals? Maybe like a 4-2-ish. I don't see it anything better, but who knows? I could be wrong. Like you said, the Celtics could go cold. We don't know.
If they keep jacking up the threes, I mean, the most upsetting thing, being a former basketball player and knowing how the game was and how it's evolved. No, Steph, you the greatest, and happy you did what you did. But I do feel like everybody thinks they can be Steph Curry, and they can't. And for me to watch somebody go right to the hole, they have an opportunity to take a shot, and they pass it out so that somebody can take a shot from 30 feet away. And that's a more that's an advantage. That's a better opportunity to score. I find that hard to believe. It just doesn't make sense to me, and it hurts me every time I watch somebody drive to the hole. I get to drive and kick out, but there are times when you watch a person and they drive and they could shoot the ball, but it's like their mindset is, let me find somebody on the wing. Let me find somebody here. I don't understand that. 2 points, still 2 points. And you can get 3 if you get fouled.
That's where I enjoy watching teams like the Nuggets. Because their mentality is go low, get in, get the easy bucket, go to Aaron Gordon, go to Jokic, that kind of thing. And they've got the kick out options, tons of them out there, obviously.
Yeah. Porter can hit the 3, Gordon can hit the 3, Jokic can hit the 2 or 3, Murray can hit the 3.
But they're a downhill team, and that's what I love watching about them. Now, their series is also kind of interesting, obviously, with the OKC Thunder. I think OKC is ultimately going to triumph, unfortunately. Well, better or worse. I mean, I think they're the deeper team. That's the thing.
I think they're the best team in the NBA, period. And they're young. And that could be a plus and a minus to them.
Right.
Because they don't have the experience in that clutch situation, whereas Denver does.
I mean, that team's capable of blowing out teams by 40, as far as as we've seen, and they can.
They can.
I think, the most interesting series left, I think, on the table is the Warriors series, obviously, with the whole dynamic. Yeah,
you feel that's interesting, though.
Well, it will be when Steph's back, and let me put it this way: if they can get to the point where he gets back, let's put it that way.
That's what I was getting at, is that they look totally different without Steph. Now, granted, they were able to put up a fight. Don't get me wrong.
Can the Timberwolves put them away is the real question. Can the Timberwolves put them away before Game 6? That's the real question.
That's the question right there. And I have a feeling that it's going to be true that they can put them away, because Steph is such an integral part of their offense. And Jimmy can go get his 30. The other cat, forget his name, something. He's in. He looks okay sometimes, and he looks weak as hell other times. And then, who else are you depending on? Draymond Green, Curly Q, what's his name?
If you look at what Steve Kerr had to do, he's played 12 players at times, which is pretty impressive. If you go down the bench, you're playing your 12th man and everything else. Now, he's doing it to try to figure out the right mix, try to get something going and a spark going. I totally get it. I mean, at one point, he didn't even play Kuminga, I think, the last series, and now you got Kuminga coming off and a little more motivated, a little more playing better. But that's where you want something like a Jimmy, Kuminga, and Buddy to go on fire, because that's a 3-guard set.
That's what they should be depending on. Hield should be in the game like Steph is in the game. He should be playing 35, 40 minutes, because that's the guy who can really generate offense for you and keep you in games and win you games. It isn't Draymond Green. Draymond had his one night where he was shooting 3 like lights out, and then that was it. And then Draymond's Draymond, so he's got positives and he's got negatives to his game that can hurt the team.
The Warriors have all these different pieces, but it's hard to be like Pajemski can go off on one night. You got most of the can play inside. Like they've got things, but it's hard to put the mix in without Steph in the middle, and that's the biggest problem right now.
And I don't think that they're going to survive it. I think they're going to lose every game. And we're being optimistic. I'm sorry. If you've ever had a hamstring injury, I have had an hamstring.
Oh, no, I get it. Yeah.
It could be 1 week, but it could also be 3 weeks.
Yeah, we're talking. Yeah, exactly. We could talk. It could be one of those lingering things. And frankly, they said it's his first hamstring injury of his career. And think about the statistics that they've been putting up. This dude runs almost 2 miles a game because of how much movement he does on the court. That's just wild,
Right. Just to get an open shot. And I'm sorry. One thing I think people forget, maybe it's because of his stature, maybe it's because I don't know what it's because, but how old is Curry? 35, 30 something?
Yeah, upper 30s. Yep.
He's getting there. And if you looked at a picture they showed, and I think we talked about this, his thumb looked like a freaking like a knuckle on a sumo wrestler. It was like this.
It was bad news.
Like you keep having these little nagging injuries, and all of a sudden Steph Curry isn't Steph Curry anymore.
No, that's what I said. Like, if they can get to Game 6, I like their chances. But right now, it's looking like probably a 4-1 Timberwolves type situation, unless something turns around tonight. Like, if the Warriors win tonight, that opens the door. That's as simple as that. I think tonight's a very key game, especially with it being in San Francisco. It's gonna be a thing. Now, who wins the Knicks game tonight? That's what's gonna be interesting.
That will be interesting. And I tell you what, they should go all out, but they got to get somebody other than they cannot count on Clutch Brunson all the time to win games.
Exactly. Too much pressure.
Bridges needs to step up. Big Cat really needs to step up. And then if you had one of the other guys, I give Hart all the credit. I feel like Hart's one of those players that gets the most out of his talent because he's like just got this head down, do what you need to do. Yeah, he'll get you 3 rebounds on a 1 possession. He'll occasionally hit the 3. He's that guy.
Hart, the Villanova trio, as great as they are together, and you could only rely on them so much. You still need another, and Cat's got to be that factor.
Cat's got to be that guy. He needs to throw up 30, and he needs to be able to be a presence. This is the biggest part. If he's not a presence underneath, then you're going to have these slashers coming in and scoring baskets at will, because sooner or later, Boston may realize that you can't actually score 2 points and win.
See, that's the thing. Like, Al Horford's more of a finesse guy. I don't see how Cat and Duncan Robinson cannot take over the game in the paint. It doesn't make sense to me. And honestly, that would help slow down the pace against the Celtics.
And that's what they need to do. But they need to maximize their possessions, and I feel like they don't do that well at times. And God forbid, if they get into a close game, Robinson has to come off of the court, because if they go to Hack-a-Shack,
it's over.
That guy can't even hit the rim. He's throwing missiles that are barely getting over the rim when he's shooting free throws. So, he might break the rim, or he might throw an air ball, or he might hit the rim and it bounces out, and you got the team going the other way, scoring 3 or 2 because
breathe again. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I think the Knicks are in a must-win tonight. I think the Warriors are in a must-win tonight. It's going to be an interesting, pressure-filled Monday for both of those teams, because it makes or breaks the series for me in both situations. I think if the Knicks lose, I think Celtics are going to take the series. I think if the Warriors lose, Timberwolves are going to win the series. Simple as that.
I'm still sort of hoping for this. Imagine the Knicks beat the Celtics.
Yeah.
And then who knows how Indiana and Knicks, you're not sure about that. And then Minnesota wins. And let's say Denver beats Oklahoma City, because Minnesota beat Denver last year. And if Denver and somehow Denver and New York could get to the finals, talk about a pregame dream of being able to talk about how these two teams traded key players from their teams, and they both
Minnesota
got that trade.
Yep. No, and frankly, Ant-Man's doing Ant-Man things. Gobert's showing up. I mean, they've got everything clicking the right way for the Wolves. Naz Reid, everything's going well for them as a team. But there's times when they've been cold. We saw that in Game 1 in series. So, they can go cold. It'll be, like I said, tonight will be a very interesting matchup. I'm curious to see what Steve Kerr does to kind of change up things and kind of he's got to throw a wrench into the Timberwolves plan somehow. Ant-Man's going to do Ant-Man things. We know that. But can he stop the other guys around him? Gobert from going off in the middle, Draymond from, blowing up like a crazy guy. which apparently is the image now. Unfortunately, he's the angry black man, as he said himself.
Well, he said that, and I sort of, and sometimes I get pissed with, I'm black. I'm black. I'm just as black as anybody else, and I've gone through my share of racism and profiling and all sorts of things. But Draymond Green will do something and not take ownership of it, like the one foul. He got fouled. He literally brought his arm up and his elbow back. He didn't need to do all of that.
Right.
Then he goes on the bench and he cries like, see, there's this, and then he gets on the thing, sees the angry black man. No, I'm sorry, you're just a man who's angry. And unfortunately, you're trying to use the black card, whereas it has nothing to do with that. You're just a straight asshole who can't control himself on the court. You being black or white or any color.
And not to make it sound like countervailing, but he draws more attention because of that antics than not. I mean, some people may misconstrue that and saying, "Oh, well, because of the antithesis that he, it's somehow racist or something like that. Oh, that's why he shouldn't be talking back, or something stupid like that, right?" But at the end of the day, is if he actually stayed in his lane, if you will, meaning take the foul, accept the roll, go back to the bench, and play it out, he'd be fine, no problem.
Like everybody else, take the foul. The dude fouled you. They called the foul. All that other stuff is unnecessary. You're on the ground and you're kicking people, you're grabbing people, you're doing that. That stuff is unnecessary. So then don't come back and try to say it's because I'm the angry black man. No, you're just a stupid ass asshole guy who happens to be black, and now you want to play the black card. And to me, there's nothing worse than me seeing somebody devalue the situation that many of us have gone through by saying something like that. It's sort of like what happened to Jesse Jackson a long time ago. He had all this credibility, but then he tried to label everything as being a black and white thing when it wasn't true. And the kids that he tried to defend never even gone to school, and it totally took away all of his legacy and the things he had built because he had no credibility anymore.
He became Don King. That was the problem.
Like I said, you just can't do that. Draymond, grow up.
Yep.
Grow up. You've punched your teammate in the face during practice. You kicked LeBron in the nuts multiple times. These things aren't just made up by people. You've done these things.
Yep.
So own it.
Yep. Nope, I don't disagree. No, like I said, and that's the thing. The Warriors can't afford Draymond, quote unquote, being Draymond because they don't have any depth behind them. It's not like the olden days when they had the championship run. They had enforcers on the team to back him up, essentially, and you had star defenders and things like that, on the team. In this case, he is probably one of the better defenders left on the team, and frankly, he's kind of like that middle guy you have to have because you don't have Steph on the floor at the end of the day.
Right.
So he has to realize his role in this case and be more responsible at the end of the day.
Yeah, because without Steph on the floor, they don't have that instant offense that can help them balance the things that they're losing on defense. They have to play a tougher defense now to keep teams from scoring and hope that they can outscore them in a lower scoring game than going off with Steph scoring 30 plus, stretching the defense because he can shoot from anywhere. You don't have that anymore. You could sort of have that in Buddy Hield, but I don't see them using
Buddy
him.
can't do it for 40 minutes. That's the thing. Buddy has yet to do it for 40 minutes. Jimmy hasn't gotten up to star Jimmy status again to where he's, taking over the floor, and it's tough for him too. So yeah, this is going to be a tough series without Steph in a mix. But like I said, I'm curious to see what Steve Kerr comes up with tonight. Maybe Kuminga finally shines like he's supposed to. He's always supposed to be the prodigal child, but he hasn't shown up yet. That kind of thing. He hasn't.
I'm sorry. Another one of these. What's wrong with these? I'm sorry. And I get it. It's not that you haven't had this throughout history, but what's with these wishy-washy ass players that look like they could be something, but they can't do it consistently or even close to being.
Joel Embiid.
What's that?
Joel Embiid.
Well, Joel Embiid, I'm sorry. I lost all the respect for him way back when. He's from Kansas. I never was a fan when he was at Kansas. He's overrated. He's got skills and everything, but he whined his way to an MVP. You haven't given it to me, the MVP. Yeah. And then as soon as he gets the MVP, he decides he doesn't want to play. But when I gave up on Joel Embiid was this. When Kawhi Leonard hit that shot, and it bounced on the rim and it went, this is when I gave, not that part, it was this part. After that happened, he was crying like a 5-year-old. Not I'm sorry, I get it. There's emotion and everything. We've played sports. I get the emotion of it, but he was crying like a 5-year-old that you told couldn't have a piece of candy, and he went. I'm sorry, grown men don't do that unless your mama's passed. You don't do
I
that
expect
because of a
that out
basketball
of
game.
children. I don't expect that out of professionals. So professionals should want more. They should be like, all right, next year I'm coming back with revenge.
Yeah, come back with a vengeance.
Yep.
He came, you know what? He won his MVP. He came back that after that year, and he basically said, I'm only going to play so many games.
Yep.
I'm only going to do so much for my team.
Yep.
He's a me kind of guy. He's not an us.
Oh, he's 100%. He's
Yeah.
the guy you don't want on a team. He's the guy you never build an organization around. But you know what? The 76ers tried.
They screwed up and put all of their eggs in his basket, and it's going to come back to bite him because nobody's going to really pick him up. He's too old and brittle. He's always injured. So where's his value now? You just stuck with a contract that'll never, I guess,
he reminds me of
realize the championship.
Maybe this isn't the best analogy, but he reminds me of Dwight Howard. Dwight Howard, to me,
another underachieving guy.
Another baby. Right. Another, I mean, yeah, physical force, don't get me wrong, once in a generation type talent. But you know what? Again, his attitude was his problem. That's why he'll never get respected as one of the best bigs ever, because he never, A, had that team success, and B, he never was a team player. That's why Shaq still makes fun of him to this day, obviously, It's like, you
Shaq can do that. Shaq can do that. And these guys could have had the same chance. Even if they could have been in Alonzo Mourning, that'd have been fine. But they couldn't even be that, And
see, Zoe was classy. That's the thing. Zoe, Tim Duncan, I revere those guys for how classy they were on the court. Yeah, Tim Duncan was apparently known as a smack talker. I get it, but that dude brought it every night.
Every night. Every night. And actually, before we close out, I think you just touched on something we didn't get a chance to talk about, and I think it's relevant.
Yep.
Greg Popovich retired as a coach and got kicked upstairs. And even I know he's not going to like this, but his body, where he is after the stroke and stuff, he's just not capable. One of the greatest coaches of all time, revered by the entire league, players, coaches, management alike, from any organization. I don't think I've ever heard a bad word about him. Every now and again, he'll have his Bill Belichick moment behind the mic. But other than that, this dude was a teacher. He was a father figure. He was a friend. And he had the longevity and the success throughout that longevity that I think helped him touch a lot of lives. And, the things that I heard, when he announced the retirement from so many different players that played for him, players that never played for him. To me, it was just,
I put him up there with
his legacy. And I think, again, you got to give a shout out to him. Greg, you were the man. And thank you for all of those years of being the coach of the San Antonio Spurs and doing it the right way.
And I give it credit. I put him up there on the Mount Rushmore with Red Auerbach. Pure class, unbelievable. And like you said, more broadly respected than probably any coach in NBA history, to say the least. You've got the Phil Jacksons of the world, don't get me wrong. But Phil also showed some of his failures later in his post-career, if you will. But Greg Popovich got more global respect than I think even Phil Jackson did in his heyday, if you think about it.
Oh, for sure. Because there were some people who loved and hated Phil Jackson.
Yes.
I don't think anybody can say that. And another thing you can say is Phil Jackson basically came to ready-made teams right away. Doug Collins got fired. Phil came in, had a Michael Jordan and a young Scottie Pippen. He had things to work with. Went to the Lakers. He had things to work with, right? Yep. Popovich nurtured this talent, whether it was Robinson or Duncan or Ginobili or Parker or even who was the guy with the big smile who used to be a coach.
Shoot, I know you're talking about.
I can't think of his name right now, but he made them ballers. He made them a dynasty. And don't get me wrong, the players are the ones who play. Don't get confused. The players are the ones who are doing the work. But he was the orchestrator, and he pulled the right levers. He did the right things to get the most out of his players, and they were a juggernaut when they were, in their heyday.
Well, I'll wrap on this note. You talk about coaches that build a culture. That's the epitome of one. Him, Mike Krzyzewski, guys like that, Tom Izzo, build a culture from nothing, literally, and start the way that a coach should, in my opinion. Start from the bottom up, build the culture, get players to buy in. It's a team sport. Remember, it's not an individual sport, and actually and do that and build the foundation for, honestly, generations going forward. That's really the key, and the thing about the coaching tree that Popovich has had, not just in basketball, but women's basketball. He's got Becky Harmon. Think about that.
Well, and that's the thing. I think, he loved the sport, and he loved having the position where he can be a mentor and a teacher. It wasn't about just him.
Right.
He didn't approach it that way. Some coaches, you could sort of see the flash and flare, and they're about them. I feel like the things that people said didn't just come from, a chance encounter. This was the kind of guy he made himself available to you.
Yes.
And he engaged with you, and he made you think. And, what more could you ask for from a coach, a friend, and GP, you the man.
Yep. Agreed. Nope. On that. And on that note, I'd say, like we said, positive culture. I think next time when we meet up, I'd like to talk about some of the folks that are trying to get maybe redemption, if you will, in their respective sports. So I'm talking about folks like Yannick Sinner, John Gruden, things of that nature, and maybe how that's all going to transpire. The reason I bring up Sinner is he had his first match back at the Italian Open this week. I'm not the biggest fan because of what happened in tennis. We'll talk about that leading into the French Open here in 2 weeks, but interesting times we have as far as culture and sport and how that all has to come together at some point.
And consistency or equality and how you dole out punishment, how you are the guardians of the rules of the sport. It's supposed to be the same for everybody.
Yep, absolutely. So we'll pick back up on that note and kind of see where that kind of transpires to other sports too, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, just real quick, you said that about John Gruden. Can't wait to talk about that. I do think that people forget this one big thing. And granted, you might do something that's why I can't run for anything. I'm sure somebody, well, I didn't have email in my day, so I probably could. But, like you say something in jest or in confidence or in this, and it's not meant to be whatever it could be perceived to be. It's literally in that moment. But some of those things can be insensitive, and some of those things come to light. And then all of a sudden you're put in this box and it's hard to get out. And Gruden's one of those who's gone through that. And
I'll throw Quenneville to the list too, because he just got rehired also. But yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Quenneville, Q was the coach of the Hawks back when we were winning.
Yep, he got the titles.
So wish you or I hope all of you enjoyed the Mother's Day, did the right things. We wish you a wonderful day, a great week. We hope to see you, a little later this week. We'll have another podcast and get a chance to talk about sports and life. But hope that you cherish every moment of your life, because tomorrow is never promised.
Very true. Also true. Enjoy the games tonight. Drama ensues in the NBA, as we saw.
Go Knicks. Go Warriors.
Agreed. And to all, we'll catch you guys next time.
All right. Peace out.